knew that a war would break out, and everybody discussed politics. The young people, like we and our parents probably with their friends, we discussed it with our friends all the time. And constantly discussions about war, constant.
And the day...
And when it broke out, we weren't even surprised anymore. September 1st, 1939. We weren't surprised. Because I remember that was the summer when I spent the summer with some young people at a camp. I went to a camp, what they called academic camp or university camp or so. And we had a lovely summer. I was only 1 month, and when I came home, I found in Warsaw this terrible, terrible, depressing atmosphere. You know, in the country we didn't feel so much, but when I came to Warsaw, back home, I felt this depressing atmosphere. The pre-war atmosphere. It's hard to describe because it's so depressing, you know. The people, some people are, we heard of people hoarding food, buying flour, sacks of flour, sacks of sugar. You know, flour was important so you can bake bread in case the bakeries are closed. Sugar was a staple. Diet was sugar used in coffee and tea and everything, in baking. So we heard about that.
When the war broke out,
yeah,
you were in Warsaw at the time.
I was in Warsaw.
So you were there during the bombings? And
I was there during the bombings all the time. I was with my parents because my brother wasn't there anymore. And we had orders to stay in the shelters. We had cellars. You know, Warsaw was built with cellars. Every apartment house had a cellar, a basement, big basement, a big cellar. So the orders were to stay in the shelters, what we call air bomb shelters. And we stayed, many people stayed there. We used to sleep there overnight. We used to go only when we knew that the siren let us know that, you know, it was a siren, and then when it started, the bombardment, there was a siren. And everybody ran, you know, people from all over would run to the shelter. And then, when it finished, there was a different type of a siren that people could go up to their apartments. Life we had a curfew. At 7 o'clock, everybody had to be home. Right away, we felt a shortage of food. We had to wait for special, you know, rations that we used to get. Let's say a quarter of a few slices of bread per person. We had to go down and get it. People were organized. The only thing I can tell you which was very interesting was the inner organization, because since we had courtyards, let's say you could go into one courtyard and there were 3 big apartment buildings, then another one, another 3 or 4 apartments, and another one. It was like, that was the European way of... And so the first, let's say, courtyard, all the tenants got together. Some men were in charge of, let's say, when a fire will break out, they became the firemen. They should watch over fires, and they would run on the roof and pour water or sand or whatever they had ready. The women were in charge of a small kitchen. We would cook very often, and help the other ones, the poor ones that didn't have apartments, didn't have their utensils, who were like, you know, transients or refugees.
You saw a lot of refugees coming in from...
Yes, from the countryside, from the provinces and so on. So we had to help them. So every housewife had to give some porridge or potatoes or whatever she had, you know. And it was a terrible shortage of food. This I remember, because when the peasants from the country would come with the wagons, they would take a horse and wagon and bring a full wagon of potatoes. There were so many people around. Everybody wanted to buy that. Very often you couldn't even get near it to buy the potatoes. You know, it was such a shortage of food. But we were organized. One helped the other one. My mother had a bit of flour. She ran upstairs when it was quiet. She used to run up to her apartment, bake a few challahs, and bring it down lunchtime so she could divide it between all the refugees, for instance. This I know very well, I remember. It was like a mini community. And the Germans entered Warsaw with a big parade. And we didn't know what to expect. We waited to see what will happen. We figured what will happen to everybody else will happen to us. We didn't realize that we'll have to face a ghetto, in the beginning open ghetto, then closed ghetto, walls, and so on. Now remember that we were struggling for food, struggling for fuel, struggling for the, worried all the time. Nobody suspected the Holocaust, so we couldn't think of it, but it was the general worry when people are deprived of their usual, usual things that they need. We didn't have a newspaper. Right away we were without a newspaper. We weren't allowed at 7 o'clock everybody had to be home. We were confined to our apartments, very often cold. We didn't have coal. Let's say in October, in November, it was already cold. We could, without heaters. So it was a big discomfort all the time. And we used to see the Germans in the beginning. It's very interesting. They even dealt with the Jews. They used to come, and with the Jews it was easy for them to make deals because they spoke Jewish and German. Somehow they understood each other. But right away, as soon as first of all, they came out a big poster. The posters appeared that everybody who has a radio, who possesses a radio, has to bring it to a certain point in the vicinity in a matter of 24 hours. That was the first one. A week later, another, how do you call it? Billboard, appeared all over the city. Everybody, whoever has a fur coat, or any fur piece, or even slippers made out of fur, had to bring it to the point, to a certain point, also under the death sentence. And then it appeared something else. Later, we had that, the ghetto, they imposed the ghetto, that people who lived outside certain boundaries had to move in to the place that was assigned as ghetto, certain streets. And so on, we had it all the time. And that's what brought on so much fear, Now, since also, don't forget, since we were so cramped, many people, you had to take in some people to your apartment because not everybody had a place to stay. So we were ordered, and this was done by the Jewish committee already, to share our apartment with other families. In my apartment, we had another family. We had to take in 3 people. And all together, we had 3 rooms. So it was like the living room, the bedroom, and the kitchen. So we had to share right away another 3. We were 6 people in 3 rooms. And I remember my mother used to sleep in, we had the maid, as I mentioned to you, so the maid used to sleep in the kitchen. There was a bed. So my mother used to sleep in the bed. I used to sleep with one of the girls and another woman in the bedroom, my father, and we put up curtains. It was very hard. And because of this, and also I remember, for instance, certain stores that the Germans previously emptied from the merchandise. They took away, they grabbed all the merchandise, they stole, they were empty. So we used to put families up there in empty stores. Everybody, whoever could brought a bed or a table or a chair from the tenants, and to make them comfortable. And we had a lot of typhoid. Many people died of typhoid. But the interesting thing is that every block had its own doctor. We had like appeals to keep the house clean, to try and to prevent sickness, to keep the house clean. And we had doctors, Jewish doctors, that used to go from house to house and check the cleanliness. Our own people, for our own good, which was very difficult to maintain in such conditions, but we tried our best.
What about, was the water still on, things like that?
The water was on, but we couldn't buy any coal. And very often, for instance, our windows were shattered because of the bombardment, and we couldn't buy any glass. So we used to put paper around, just paper to protect it from the cold, a little bit, the cold shouldn't enter the house, which wasn't too much. In the winter time, we had ice. We had from where? From our walls were covered with, I would say, an inch, a minimum of an inch or an inch and a half of ice. And we slept, that's how we slept, in cold rooms. We had no choice. I remember that before I used to go to bed, my father would take a hot water bottle, run with it fast, and warm up it for me so I shouldn't go into a freezing bed. That's how we lived.